Clarity on Fire, a podcast for people who know what they don't want out of their life and career, but aren't sure what they'd rather be doing.
In a world where it's easy to exist, but hard to feel alive, we, Kristen
and Rachel,
two certified life and career coaches, are here to help you cut through the information overload, get unstuck, and focus not just on how you can have a career you're passionate about, but how to create a whole life that feels fulfilling.
So join us here, where we serve up inspiration and down-to-earth wisdom in a way that only two best friends can.
We want you to experience the relief of knowing that, yes, you're allowed to want more out of your life and career.
And no, you don't have to wander through the dark anymore. Our job is to light the fire that shows you the way. Let's go.
Hello.
Hello.
Oh, that was really weird. I felt like I wasn't trying to be a man. I was like, hello.
You're lowering a couple octaves there.
Oops. Well, I'm mostly over this cold, so yes. Okay, so this is a normal person episode that I'm excited about because I'll tell you in a second, it's a buildup. We've been building up to this unknowingly. It's the culmination of a series we didn't know we were doing. Yes.
Oh,
yes.
Excellent.
Yes.
Okay.
But I want to remind you guys that we announced last Friday. And so now we've got 1 week before we officially open enrollment for one-on-one coaching.
Remember that it is first come, first serve. Because we have more limited capability than we ordinarily do in a coaching enrollment.
We say that every time. Every time we're like, no, we have fewer spots. No, we have fewer spots. But that's just...
It does keep getting smaller.
Sorry. I already have a decent amount of clients right now. And then now we're doing a coaching enrollment. I'm like, oh, well, I'm sorry, but I can't talk to that many people. So really, it truly is if you want to do this, you're going to have to know that you want to do it. You're going to have to get in line.
And that's why we're giving you some heads up. So you can think about it ahead of time and say, yes, pick me.
Yeah. Like,
let's talk about this.
Don't be that person. It's okay if you are listening to this and you were at one point this person. I don't judge you, but I'm just telling the people now because they don't have an excuse if they're listening to this a week out to be this person. Don't be that person who gets on the phone with me and is like, wait, but like, how much is it? Or how long does it last? I'm like, girl, if you can read my website, you should know the answer to that question already. I'll answer questions that are not explicitly laid out. And I'll make things clear. I will elucidate for you. But I shouldn't be explaining basic crap to you.
Well, we do try to be very transparent ahead of time, which is why we put our prices on our website. We put generally the process you can expect, the timeline, that sort of thing. Of course, we can give you more insight into all of that. But yeah, you can get the basics on our site, which is why another reason we wanted to give you a little heads up so you can actually do your due diligence ahead of time and say, okay, this actually sounds like it might work. Let's chat, make sure it's a good fit. Let's clarify anything because we don't explain every single part of the process on there, and that's fine. We'll do that on our call with you. But yeah, you can come prepared. We appreciate that.
I don't know whether I need to spend any time at this moment talking about like what the point is. Because I feel like you get it. I feel like if you listen to this podcast, you kind of already understand the point of coaching, right? Do I have to explain it? I don't think we're going to be explaining it more and more as this is more of an alert. This is for like the people who don't need me to explain it and have been maybe thinking about it and don't need any work done on their behalf. That's who this announcement is.
I will just throw it out there. I don't think we have a little, what would you call it? A tagline? I don't know what you would call it, but we have a phrase that tries to get to the heart of who we work with.
Let's see if she can get this right.
And we never talk about it on the podcast. So I figure it might be worth bringing up every once in a blue moon, which is we work with people who know what they don't want out of their life and career, but have no idea what they'd rather be doing. So
yeah, Kristen,
if you heard
it's in
me
the
say
intro of every episode of this podcast, which I know you don't listen to. But they might not listen to it. They might fast forward over to the intro. Yeah, that's fine.
That's what I do in every podcast. I mean, except I will give you lots of props. I do not do that on Forever Alone because I love the intro. I love the music. I love all of it.
That's because you're not in it.
But every other
fast forward
podcast
over it because it's not your voice. Because you don't care.
podcast,
It's my voice, so
fast
you'll
forward
listen to it.
No, not. I mean, saying other podcasts. I fast forward through intros. I'm like, I've heard it a billion times, so they might not have heard it in a while if they're fast forwarding.
Oh, okay, great. Well, Forever Alone is a good intro.
It is a good intro. So if you heard me say that and you're like, hi, yeah, that's me. I know what I don't want to be doing, but that does not mean I know what I do want to be doing. Then this is probably the process for you. That's why we built it.
Yeah. And guess what we don't do? I'm not like, hi, Angela. I just made up that name. Well, not invented it because that name has existed for quite a long time, but I just mean, pulled it out of my head. So inventive. Anyway. Hi, Angela. Do you want to be a baker? No. Oh. Okay. How about a horse wrangler? No. Okay. What about an accountant? That's not what this is. Okay. No. That's not what I do.
What a combination. A horse wrangler and a baker. I mean, okay.
Yeah, but I want to know who Angela is. The solution to their existential crisis is like, no. I don't know, maybe I should be a horse wrangler. It's like, no.
A job title is not going to give you instantaneous purpose and understanding of self and life fulfillment.
Nothing outside of you gives you any of those things if you are not capable of being fulfilled already. And if you do not have a strong sense of identity and purpose already. So those things are the happy byproduct of having fulfillment and purpose internally. And that's hard work to do on your own, which is what we do.
Yeah. Instead, we're like, hey, Angela, let's figure out who you are, what you want out of your life, what your kind of inherent purpose is. And then does horse wrangling tend to align with that? Cool. Now let's maybe talk about that.
Let's go wrangle some horses.
Sure. But imagining Angela in her cowboy boots and her big old
and she's obviously wearing Wranglers because obviously
she definitely lives in Texas.
I was thinking like Montana, but that's okay.
Like Oklahoma or something. Yeah.
No, definitely not there. I don't know why, but Angela does not live in Oklahoma. Anyway, okay. So like, be like Angela. And, want to get clear on your inner crap before you try to solve your outer crap. So that's what coaching is for. Link in episode notes if you want to check out our one-on-one coaching page and just brush up on the details before you decide to wrangle yourself some one-on-one coaching during our enrollment window next Friday. All right. Diana will love this intro. It's exactly the brand of weird and chaotic that she would want for her intro. I think she can confirm. I'm glad to hear it
because some people might have been like, what are you doing to my episode?
No, Diana will like it. Would you like to read Diana's bio?
I would. All right. Diana has led an accidentally interesting life. She's worked on Wall Street and in the antiquarian book trade, used to sing in a traveling choir and investigate abandoned schools, not her brightest of moments, and lived abroad in both Scotland and Ireland. Subterranean tunnels and medieval manuscripts were involved. After spending most of her life with a death grip on control, she recently committed to letting the universe take the lead with surprisingly quick results. Weary listener, take heart. If she can do it, then you can too. I love that intro.
She has had so many different jobs. That's not even what this episode is about. We do touch on her very haphazard career history, which again is proof that, hey, you can have a really weird history and still end up just fine. Like you don't have to have a linear path. That's not what this is about. But this episode is mostly about letting go of control. So something that I think we all need reminders about and lessons in, regardless of how many times we talk about it, it's never not necessary.
Mm-hmm.
So enjoy this episode and we will be back at the end. Hi, Diana.
Hey, Rachel.
Hello. It's fun to look at your face while I talk to you.
It's lovely to look at yours.
We haven't done that too many a time.
We haven't. I've seen your picture on the podcast, but it's not moving. We don't live in the Potterverse where pictures are alive.
don't remind me of that. Someone told me today that listening to our podcast makes them feel like they're going to Hogwarts. And I was like, that's the best compliment I've ever gotten about this podcast, bar none. So thank you. That just reminded me of that. Okay. So I feel like this conversation is a long time coming just because I feel like I've known you forever. And don't actually know how long it's been. It's been many years, right? It's been like 5 years? Shorter?
I mean, I've been listening to Clarity on Fire since you guys were just putting out blog posts and you had the Clarity Gems and all that stuff. So it's been years for me. But I started working with you in 2019.
Has it only been 2 years?
It's been just over 2 years, but a lot's happened in that 2 years.
Seriously. So. Right. Okay. So we have a lot of ground to cover, even though it feels like I've known you for like 5 years. So I think it's funny that apparently we've only really known each other for 2. Okay. I'll take your word for it. Okay. So you are actually, I won't say the culmination because this pattern could continue, but talking to you is the current culmination of a pattern that Kristen and I have inadvertently fallen into in this podcast, which is someone listens to an episode about somebody else and they're like, I want to try that, or I'm going to give that a shot. And then they go do that. And then Kristen and I talk to that person. And then it kind of continues. I feel like we've had this trend, and there's been a number of episodes. I will link back to all of them in the show notes of interviews with people where they end up hearing somebody talk about practicing feminine energy or kind of doing a job search or something in a very like reverse kind of chill or unattached way. And they're like, I want to try that. And then they go do that. And we also had an episode because inspired by you, by the way, remember the one where we said, how do you do feminine energy?
Yeah.
You were one of the people who were demanding that we have an episode about that because you were like, I really like the idea of this. I've been listening to your episodes where you talk about this, but I don't get how to do it.
It's because I had an absolute death grip on control.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about that because I had to, in you asking, I mean, a couple other people sort of asked the same question, but you phrased it in like the most sort of direct way, which was like, I need like a process, basically. Like I need to understand how to actually put it into action, which in and of itself is a kind of a masculine question, which is fine. But in you asking, I actually then had to think about, well, then how do you do it? And I will link back to that episode because I think that you hearing that, from what I can tell, it worked. Like it helped you actually understand how to practice it, not just think about it as like a theory.
Yeah, like I said, I think it all built. I listened to every episode that had to deal with feminine energy probably 3 times.
You were like, I'm going to crack this. I swear to God.
I realized my problem was, and I knew this when I asked the question, like I needed to figure out like, okay, what steps do I take? But the problem with feminine energy is there aren't steps that you take. That's too action oriented. It's passive. It's more of, I actually kind of figured out that it's more like a feeling.
Mm-hmm.
At least for me. Even though I've had a history of being disassociated with my body. I felt it in my body, which is how it came about. And I had an epiphany on a drive to work, listening to one of the feminine energy episodes that I think probably was like the breakthrough moment for me, where I was like, oh, I can do this. And it wasn't like I'm doing this perfectly. It's just like, I guess I'll just try this. And then all the dominoes fell right after that.
Okay, so we're going to talk about your epiphany for sure, but I want to go back and talk about your death grip of control, which I think you've probably been exercising for most of your life, yes?
Yeah, pretty much. I think I was pretty chill as a kid, and then high school came.
Yeah, so okay, tell me about tell me about the onset of your death grip.
I'm not entirely certain. I just know that at some point, actually no, I can tell you probably when it happened. So I have some health issues, and they started when I was 13. And it's one of those invisible health issues that every doctor told me, no, you're fine. It's all in your head.
You're crazy. Love that. Basically. Love that for you.
And the problem was I knew viscerally that no, this is not normal. Like it wasn't anything horrible, but it was still like, no, something is wrong with me. And sure enough, something is definitely like off kilter.
Mhm.
I'm not going to say something is wrong with me. My body is acting perfectly. It's just reacting to certain things in a way that I would not like it to react that way.
Right.
So I'm working
Yeah.
with a doctor now. It's great. But because of that, I had this feeling of I'm not doing something right. Everyone else around me is able to, go to school, do the activities after, school, get their homework done, and function as a human. And I felt like I was barely treading water there. So I think my death grip on control really came with just this feeling that if nothing's wrong with me, like there's no reason for this, then I am doing something wrong. And I don't understand what it is that I should be doing right.
How do I
So-
fix it? Like, how do I
Exactly.
fix myself? Yeah.
How do I make myself a functional adult is the whole thing.
Which is this makes me so mad on your behalf because, well, not only to be told to be gaslit by doctors, which is
Yeah.
something that many of us have experienced. I've totally experienced that before. I have other clients who've also gone through horrible things and been told, no, it's all in your head. I'm like, do we do that to men as much as we do that to women? I can't say for sure, but I have a pretty strong theory about that.
No. There are studies that show that doctors will not believe women, specifically Black women. It's even worse.
Yeah, I'm
But
sure.
women in general, they basically say, no, this is all in your head for two reasons. One, because they're women and they think that they're just being hysterical. And two, because women's bodies are different than men's.
Right. Our issues present
hormonal-
differently. Yeah.
Our issues present differently. We also, I think, just have a much more, I'm going to say, sensitive ecosystem in our bodies.
I think that's
And-
probably true, right?
Oh yeah, it's definitely true. Because again, our bodies are like, is it okay to have a child right now or not?
Right. Yes.
And it tries to do the whole equilibrium thing and just like get things figured out. And then, like I said, because you have all these different hormones that are working in the ways that they're trying to work and trying to balance themselves to make you a good
True.
host for a child. Like I said, things just tend to get wonky. And part of the other problem is a lot of tests on like medications and all this other stuff. This is where like my health
like
background.
the
comes in.
studies and stuff they're done on
Yeah.
men.
Exactly. So they're not
Yeah.
they don't look into how these things affect women and the side effects that show up there.
Which are very different. They're,
Very
they've
different.
discovered now on a lot of medications and stuff, totally different.
Yeah, people are finally realizing it, and women are sitting there going, "Really great."
Because I've been suffering this whole time. Thanks. Okay. Well, that was a great feminist tangent. Love it. Directly relevant to what we're talking about. But your death grip makes perfect sense then. And this is a theme, and I've probably brought it up in almost every normal person interview, but I think it's interesting that the way it's manifesting here, which is humans, I don't know why we do it, but we are prone to take responsibility for the problem that's in front of us. Not from necessarily a mature, evolved place, but like in terms of blame, people are typically very good at looking outside themselves and seeing an issue or they're maybe potentially having a negative experience at work, at school, with their health. And their knee jerk is to go, what is wrong with me that this is happening? As opposed to what is wrong with this situation and why am I not a match to it? I'm fine. What's wrong with this situation? I don't know why we take the blame, but we do. We internalize the problem. And that's what you did.
Yeah, I think it has something to do with, from a sociological standpoint, we don't want to be ostracized by our tribe. So
For sure.
if something is going wrong, we have that knee-jerk reaction of what have I done wrong, because you don't want everyone to say you're the problem.
Right.
So I think that it's that, and it's also if I'm the problem, then I have control over changing the situation, as opposed to something is wrong and I have absolutely no control over it. It's why people feel helpless when your friend
Right.
is going through a horrible time. You can't fix them. You can't help. I mean, you can be a support system, but
Yeah.
if your friend is depressed, you can't lift them out of that depression.
No, you're right. It requires you to sort of admit your own powerlessness, which is not something we want to do. It's terrifying. And so it feels safer to death grip onto control, which in your case is really an Achilles heel, because we're it creates a bigger problem, because constant death grip on control is just being in stress all the time, which is not great for your health and for your body's ability to recover, because your body can't actually heal if it's not in rest mode.
No. And I think one of the other problems was as I lose my voice, apparently, or go through puberty, one of the two.
It's a delayed onset puberty.
We're still waiting for my older brother's voice to drop, so it just fits.
Okay.
One of my superpowers is how very stubborn I am.
You and I share that in common.
Yes, this is why we're friends.
Mhm.
This is why, like, I'm like, I need Rachel as my coach because she will slap me upside the head. I felt like
I think I have a number of times, proverbially speaking.
Yeah, I felt like Rachel, Kristen might have just been like a little too nice for me. But
I've had multiple people say that, and I think I've had multiple people say Rachel would have been too mean for me.
Yes,
so it all works out.
It all works out. But because I'm stubborn, I got through. I did high school, I did college at an Ivy League caliber school. I did 2 master's degrees.
We're gonna have to talk about that because people are gonna be really fascinated by your educational background.
Yeah. But I've worked in some very stressful environments, and I have gotten through all of that without like my health dragging me down into like the pit of despair by basically me just saying, hell no,
nope,
I'm not going to let that happen, and just barreling my way through somehow. Honestly, I look back on what I've done and I'm like, how the hell did I do that? Knowing what my health issues are, I'm like, how the hell did I
just sheer power of will. Yeah.
Sheer power of will.
But again, it takes a toll on your mind and body. And then again, it's like, well, but my mind and body already have a toll. So like, what am I going to do? I just gotta, I just got to keep going because I don't want to like forego all these opportunities or things that I want to do just because I don't feel well. So I get it, right? It becomes a very like learned, and then you reinforce the pattern over time because you think, well, this is the only way I can be successful is to keep powering through. It's the only way I know at this point. It's the only way I've known since I was 13.
Yeah. And that's why when you guys started talking about feminine energy, like I felt it in my head. I'm like, no, that's what I need. Like I knew I was stubborn, and that's how I got myself through things. I'm like, no, I need that feminine energy because one, I know that I just know that I'm a very feminine person as far as that's concerned. I have a lot of masculine energy, but I just know that, again, the whole disassociation of my body because I had health issues and I was kind of divorced from it, and relearning that over time, I just felt like I was divorced from that feminine energy and I needed to somehow relearn it. I knew that I had it when I was a kid. I was much more easygoing as a kid. Things definitely happened in just a very easy way. There was a lot of ease when I was, a child up until the health issues came about. So I knew I had it at one point, and it was more about just rediscovering it, not like getting it, just like finding it within myself because I knew it was there. It was just a matter of realizing where it was.
Okay. I want to take a detour right now. That's not really a detour. We're going to take a scenic route back to this back to this point in the conversation, because I do want to go through your very interesting, not linear history.
Yes.
Educationally and career-wise, because I think that's always reassuring and validating to people when they hear someone who's like, if I told you what I was doing now, like 10, 15 years ago, my past self would be like, huh? Like, how did you get there? So walk us back. I mean, however far you want to go that you think is relevant to this story.
I know exactly where we'll walk back to.
Okay.
And I'm going to give Cliff Notes versions as much as I can.
That's fine.
Yeah. So I went to library school because I wanted to be a librarian.
What year was this? Just like for reference.
I started library school in August of 2006.
So 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually,
so you were like, the internet, it's not going to stick around. We're going to.
No, it's
no.
I mean, I won't go into a rant on what librarianship is, but I loved libraries and just it felt like the right thing to do. It was a calling right there. So I went. And because I loved history, specifically medieval history, I specialized in rare book librarianship, thinking to myself, oh, I'll specialize in this, and that will make me qualified for both public librarianship, possibly academic, and special librarianship. I'm getting a gamut, not realizing I was actually niching myself down, but that's besides the point.
Okay.
So I went to school, did that. I was an absolute dork and finished the 36 credit program I finished my degree in December of 2007. So it was just over a year.
A year and change. Wow.
A year and change. Because I decided I wanted to take multiple courses during the semester and then take all the courses during the summer. But problem, it was December 2007. And that was right before the recession hit. And you saw it happen. So the recession hadn't fully hit, but it started to like slow everything down. So when it was too late for me to do anything else, like I had already applied for graduation, everything was set. I saw what was happening to the economy. And I'm like, oh no, libraries are the first place to lose their funding. And sure enough, there was a hiring freeze. Get out of school, moved in with my parents, because what else am I going to do at that point in time? I couldn't find a job before I left. And then they started laying off all the librarians. So I was in the job pool with people who had 2 to 5 years of experience, plus all of the other people who had just graduated, into an economy where there were no jobs. Did temp work for a couple of years that paid me, I think I made like $8,000 for the entire year because they were paying me nothing. Because no one could find jobs at that point in time. And in 2010, I was like, I can't keep doing this. Talked to a bunch of people, and all the jobs that I could see asked for a second subject master's. So I decided I'll get a second subject master's, but I'm not going to do it the normal way. I'm going to run away to Ireland. And so that's what I did, because it was also a 1-year program. So it was actually shorter and less expensive than doing one in the States. So off to Ireland I went and got my master's in medieval language, literature, and culture because I wanted to make myself even more unemployable. And I can't complain because it was an amazing experience. I loved it. I will talk to anyone about it who wants to hear it, but that's besides the point for this conversation. Finished that degree. So I went from 2011, graduated into, finished my degree program in 2012. I actually walked for my degree in 2013. Moved back to Long Island in October of 2012 and started working for my uncle because he needed some help at his place. And long story short, my friend works on Wall Street. She still does to this day. And it's like, Diana, I have a position open. I need someone I can trust. We need to fill it right away. Apply. So I applied for this job on Wall Street. And my friend made it so that I got this job on Wall Street.
Doing what?
Anymore. Okay. I'm trying to think of how to explain this to people who don't know finance. And I did not know finance. I think that's important to say.
Yes, I am a rare book librarian who specialized in medieval literature and language.
Yeah,
I don't know shit about finance.
No, but I knew how to manage projects and I was organized. So that was what was needed. And my friend she knew she could trust me. I was a known quantity at that point because I was literally her like right-hand person at that point. I was an executive assistant. There were 2 co-heads for this one giant area for all of the Americas.
Okay.
So in finance, there's equities, which is stocks, and then there's everything else, which is fixed income, mortgages, foreign exchange, stuff like that. So they were the co-heads for fixed income for all of the Americas.
Okay. Wow.
Very their like a boss was the global head, and his boss was like the person who ran the bank. So, global people. They were pretty high up. And my friend put me into that position and I hated it.
Shocker.
I know. Well, here's the thing. I loved the people I worked with. I have such respect for people who work on Wall Street because they work their asses off. They make a lot of money. They earn that money.
Oh, you couldn't pay me enough money to work there ever.
I know. And my job was far less stressful than any of theirs, but it's just, I'm not very good at like someone turning to me, asking me something, and just like at the drop of a hat, telling them something. I have to like stop, like reassess, and then I can continue. But that pause was apparently too much. And it was just, again, it was one of those situations where very much like I was pushed into the water and told to swim. Like I knew nothing and I was trying to figure it out as I went in a very like high up, very stressful environment. So yeah, I hated it. But I love the people I worked with, but I wanted to get out and I was exhausted. And long story. Oh, by the way, I got that job. Like I applied, I interviewed and got was offered the position on my 30th birthday.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So my 30s changed everything. And then on my 31st birthday, the company was reorganizing. They let my boss go.
Okay. So literally a year you were
literally
there.
A year. Well, no. I was still there. So they let my boss go. They were reorganizing. Okay. What they did was they would let the person go and then offer them another position at the company. But it had nothing to do with them. They were restructuring everything and they were doing it from the bottom up. And the person they were moving in was just like one person who had run it before. But instead of having 2 co-heads, you now have one head. And there was the other executive assistant at that point, because my friend had moved up in the company, had a year's experience on me. So I realized after like 3 days after that, I'm like, they're letting me go. They're letting me go, but they haven't done it yet. And I thought that if I told them, they would have to, I'm trying to think of the word, like they'd have to basically just like escort me out right away because I had access to too much confidential stuff. But finally I realized like, no one can look me in the eye. I have so many projects that need to be wrapped up and like handed off to other people. I'm like, and I can't do that. So I just pulled the chief of staff aside and said, listen, I know this is happening. I'm fine with it. Perfectly fine. I'm like, but I have so much stuff. I'm like, I really need to like do X, Y, and Z. I would rather do this over a period of time than it being like a last minute thing. And I cannot tell you how happy that made everyone. For 3 weeks, I was able to wrap up projects. People were able to look me in the eye again. It was great. And I realized they actually kept me on so that I was working there when they actually gave out the bonuses.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, they were doing something really nice for me. So last day, I was all happy. I left, took the severance happily. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to make my full-time job now. Job searching. And so I had this thing where I'd like find the job, apply for it, do this whole thing. And I found a job within 3 weeks in the antiquarian book trade, which was actually using my rare book knowledge, which is great. I'm like, oh, great. I'll get some experience. I'll work there for 2 years and then I'll move on. No, I worked there for 5 years. And
I forgot it was so long.
Yeah. Started there in 2014, left in 2019. And I love my bosses to death. I'm still in touch with them. They're wonderful. But I worked for a married couple out of their house. And I did everything but buy the items and do like the hardcore cataloging, like description, because to do that because they were music antiquarians, you needed to know German, which they, for some reason, kept thinking that I knew. It's not one of the languages that I have under me. I don't know why they kept thinking that I knew German. I was transcribing Russian, and I was so impressed with myself, and they didn't care. But if I fixed the Wi-Fi, I was God herself. But like I said, I love my bosses, but unless I was going to buy their business or go into book selling myself, it wasn't really, there was no place for me to move.
Yeah.
I started looking for something else, which is when I started getting more and more involved in Clarity on Fire.
Okay.
I took the short course. I took the virtual.
The PPVE. Yeah.
And actually it was the PPVE right before you opened up coaching again in 2019. I had just started a new position, which fell in my lap out of nowhere.
Very much so.
We'll explain that one as well. So I worked for my uncle's company, which, long story short, vitamins, just know that. His company got absorbed by what was his parent company. Anyway, it's a long story how that organization goes. And the owner of the company remembered me because it's a tiny family company. And he knew that I was a librarian, which of course meant that I could write for some reason.
Sure, you can read, therefore you must be able to write.
Precisely.
Books.
So,
well, it's true though. He wasn't wrong.
He was not wrong, but not for the reasons that he thought he was.
Okay.
So he contacted my uncle and said, hey, we need someone to help us out with copywriting. Can we get your niece on the phone? So I started talking to them. For some reason, my uncle, my godfather, even though I had been working full time at the same place for 5 years, thought that I worked part-time at a tea shop. I don't know. I helped out. I have a friend with a tea shop and I help her out during the holidays, but I don't know why he thought that I wasn't working for 5 years. So anyway, long story short, we started talking about things, kept talking more and more about marketing because I'd be helping out the marketing team. And I started brainstorming with them for things that they could do. They ended up liking me so much that they just offered me a position. And completely outside of librarianship. This is in marketing, which I had kind of been doing for my bosses in the book trade, but not to that extent. And I'm like, you know what? I need to get out. This is paying me more money. I'm like, I think it's time for me to move on. So off I went to this other position, thinking that it was going to be really helpful for my career, not realizing what I was getting myself into. So I started with that company and then I started coaching with you. And 2019 was the most stressful year of my life because I started the new job, had to leave my old job with less than 2 weeks notice because they wanted me to fly out to a giant convention in California 2 days after I started. So I started on a Friday.
I remember that.
I was there on Monday. And then Tuesday I was flying out to California for an exhausting conference because we had to set up the booth and I was on my feet for like 14 hours a day.
And you're like, I don't know what I'm doing. because this was my second day, but sure, I'll go to this conference.
Thankfully, they didn't expect anything from me besides, hey, be a person at this booth. Here are like the things that you need to hit. And I'm a personable person. And because of my health issues, I've taught myself a lot. So I learned a lot along the way. So I'm like, oh yeah, natural herbal supplements. I understand like the word synergistic and all these other things. So I'm able to talk to people and like talk up our products, the 3 things that we had in the front. Because, I talked to them and then I handed them off to one of our salespeople. It worked. Just did that, came back. I was just exhausted. And then my parents turned to me like, so you have a good paying job. We're listing our house.
Bye-bye, move out. Yeah.
Basically. And they decided to list our house right away, even though I told them, hey, why don't you start packing first? And once you get to a certain point, then list your house because it's going to sell right away. And then you're going to like be scrambling. No, Diana, it won't do that. Sure enough, it did that. So I had to find an apartment, found the apartment, moved into the apartment. Mind you, I had no time to save anything. I was like scrounging together all the cash that I had just to like pay the deposit on the apartment. Move myself into the apartment, get my apartment set up. And you remember what was happening with that. Move my parents out of their place because they sold their place and they needed to be out. While I was helping my parents move out, found out that my dad had lung cancer, which worked out really well because they caught it so early. It was one of those situations where he was having stomach problems, like just weird like pains or what have you. And so he went for some type of like a scan. I'm like, well, there's nothing wrong with your stomach, but there's something on your lung. And after that, the stomach pains stopped.
So wild how that happens, right?
Crazy. So who knows exactly what caused it, but they were able to like look at it. They were able to remove it. So he had surgery. They removed part of his lobe. Actually, I think they removed the entire upper portion of his lobe or something because he's in his 70s and had some emphysema. But it was like the smallest cancer. It was like, I think it was stage 1A. It required nothing else. Basically, hey, just come back every 6 months for, another scan just to make sure, but couldn't have metastasized. They caught it so early. So he was getting over that. Then my parents moved down to North Carolina and then it was the holidays. And all I could think to myself was, I just need the holidays in 2019 to be over. And then when 2020 comes, I'll be able to rest.
Yeah.
And in this time, we had another giant expo that I was I was the event coordinator. So I had to get that together, and go to it and do that. So that was stressful, which was the week after my dad had surgery. It was like 3 days after my dad had surgery. I was off to Baltimore for this giant convention. Then I had to plan the next one, which happened in March, which was when I had gone to the year before. And all I could think was just wait until after this convention is over. And then I'm going to take a week off. I just need to wait until like the end of March 2020. That's all I need to wait for. And then I'll be able to rest. And then the world stopped, which was interesting because before the world could stop, I had to get all of our stuff back from California that we had shipped out there that was waiting for us for this convention, which the day before the convention started, they canceled. So it was just crazy stress and then nothing. And I can't tell you how much I loved the nothing.
I know. Yeah. I think you and I were two of the people who were like, I don't mind quarantine.
Honestly, there were days where I'm like, what was the last time I left my apartment? I haven't seen a person and I don't care. So that happened. And it was around that time that I started, my job started getting more and more toxic with various things that we won't go into at the moment. And I was just like, I need to get out of here, which is when I really started job searching, like around June of 2020, because they forced us all to come back into the office. Even though I had 2 doctor's notes saying, no, don't let Diana come back into the office, have her work from home still. They're like, no one works from home because not everyone can work from home. It didn't make any sense. So they just wanted butts and seats. So,
which is so silly because it's like, we've only been doing this virtually for how many months now? Like,
and my department was so much more efficient because it was me and 2 graphic designers basically at the time and my boss. We had daily meetings. It was great. We were on top of things, which kept my boss like in the loop, as opposed to when he would like disappear for a time and then come back and not know what was happening and want to take over again. So it kept him in the loop. And because we were working from home, no one was coming in and bothering us. They had to be much more deliberate about asking for things. So it cut down on so much stupid busy work and just conversations that just took away your time and didn't add anything to your day. We did so much better. And then we were all forced to come back. So did that and then really started job searching. And I don't even know if I remember, because again, time has no meaning at this point in time. Everything is blurring into one.
I think this is where we pause and we come back to our this, because we're in our present timeline now. We've caught up to our present timeline.
Well,
but
kind of.
I want to talk about your mindset, because lately what I'd been hearing from you was, oh my God, why is nothing changing? I have been wanting a new job for such a long time, and I feel like the universe keeps telling me no and delaying, and I just don't understand. And like, I'm accepting it, but I am kind of confused by it. That was the vibe that I was getting from you.
So from summer of 2020 until July of 2021.
So almost a year.
Basically a year. Like I said, I was applying to jobs, and at that point in time, I had gotten very used to accepting if something doesn't happen, it's because it wasn't meant for me. The whole idea of what's meant for me won't pass me by. It's like, but the problem was I kept feeling like this isn't meant for me because I didn't get it, even though I was perfect for the role. And that's the problem. I kept applying for things where I was perfect for the role and then just would not get it at all. And I mean, I'd be fine if I applied for the job and either I wasn't good for it or they said, it's like, hey, we had someone who was just so much more experienced. I fully accept that. I'm like, but I was perfect for the role and I just never got calls, or I started getting calls this summer, but it just never went anywhere. So it was one of those things where I'm like, okay, I have to accept the fact that this isn't meant to be. But at the same time, I just feel in my gut like I need to get out of this job for my health. That's what I need, but that's not what's coming to me. And I couldn't figure out, like, I just felt like I was spinning in circles, very much in the dark room, like floundering, trying to find the light switch. Which is when the feminine energy episode started. And I'm like, yes, that is what I need in my life.
Is this a different? Yeah. Okay.
Yes. But yeah, so it was seriously a good year, like almost 12 months entirely of just floundering. And then one of the recent, I think it was like the beginning of June, because I'm pretty sure I was driving to a wedding for my cousin, listening to one of the feminine energy episodes. I think it actually was right after the feminine energy one. It was the one like, okay, these are the steps that you could theoretically take.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I listened to that one probably about 4 times. Just to get it into my head.
Yeah.
Just that mindset. So yeah, so I started that and then started doing more feminine energy there, still floundering and doing it very imperfectly. And then do you want me to go into the epiphany now, or should we?
I want to know, I do want to hear about the epiphany, but I want to know how you actually did, like how you implemented, because that was the thing, right? Is like, I don't know how to do it. So then what did you start doing differently that you weren't doing before?
Well, that's actually where the epiphany comes in.
Okay.
But
then great.
prior to that, I had been just trying to, I think Kristen had talked about when she got her job. I don't remember exactly where that is in this timeline. How she basically took a very feminine energy approach on LinkedIn, just applying to anything that was easy to apply and seeing what landed in her lap.
Yeah.
So I started doing more of that. And if any opportunities for that's when I started getting interviews. Not many, but enough. And
interesting.
Yeah. So I started getting them, but it wasn't working out. And I was glad it wasn't working out because the opportunities I was getting, I was like, this one isn't right. And it was because all of them were in office. And my one requirement was that the job had to be remote. Fully remote. No option for me to go in. I would never have to go into the office. Maybe I'd have to travel like here or there when times are better, but fully remote. That's what I needed. And I started getting that. But again, I was still gripping. And I knew I was still gripping. I was trying, but just still trying to control the situation too much. And then I was driving to work. Lord knows which episode I was listening to. And I just had this almost like the Liz Gilbert, like go to bed, Liz thing in my head, where it was a phrase and then a feeling. It was just let the universe support you. And I literally felt myself almost like falling back in my head, I imagined it was like a giant elastic band that just completely supported me and was bouncing. Just this very visceral feeling of just allowing yourself to gently fall back and do that.
And then eventually be sprung forward if it's an elastic band.
Eventually you
Slingshot.
could. Yeah, it wasn't like you were just falling. It was very supportive, like fall back into like the soft cloud that would support you all the way down. And so I'm like, oh, this is a great idea. So anytime from that point forward, I started feeling stressed about my job search or trying to feel myself control things, I would stop and I would just remember that sensation and I would immediately calm down. And like I said, and the problem here is that I don't know how to explain that to anyone else because it wasn't a thing to do. It was just this literal, like, somatic feeling that I had and somehow just put me in the right mindset, or I don't know. So it worked a little too well because I think that went on for like a month, because I think that was like the end of June, beginning of July. And I remember just thinking, there was a full moon. I'm like, okay, full moons are for releases. I'm like, you know what? I am totally done with this job. I'm like, I can honestly say this isn't me like holding on or anymore. I'm like, I don't think I could be any more done. And it's not like I haven't any emotions towards it being done, like frustration or anger or something like that. It was just, no, I'm just that feeling of, I just don't care anymore. I'm done. Almost like I wanted to throw it over my shoulder. And that was on a Sunday. And then on Tuesday, they called us into the office and told us that our entire department was being dissolved. And we had the option of taking severance, or they would move us into different places. And the two graphic designers obviously were staying in marketing. And for some reason, they were going to move me into something completely different. And it was Alex actually that helped me. Because I basically contacted her. I'm like, hey, I have this decision to make. I'm not entirely certain which one I should do. And in talking to me, she stopped me. She's like, you want to take the severance. She's like, that's what's calling to you. You're just looking for an excuse to not take it. You're looking for like a reason. And again, it has to do with like that whole gripping onto control, going back to my past. Like, I'm not a functional adult. I'm doing something wrong. And just thinking that my visceral reaction of taking the severance was me. No, that is a mistake. I'm doing something wrong. I should do the other thing. And as soon as she said that,
I was just going to tell people who Alex is.
Oh, yes.
I was just, cause she hasn't been a normal person yet, though.
That's right.
Obviously she will be. But Alex is our community ambassador for our Patreon group. And, she and I have been doing a bonus podcast series on Patreon about, quitting your job. And so she had just recently quit her full-time job and decided to take the summer off. So she was a perfect person to kind of enable your decision to take that severance, because she was like living the life already. And she was like, this is great. No, you need to do this.
Total enabler, forever thankful. So I did the severance, and everyone around me was so scared. And for some reason, the more scared everyone got around me, the more calm I felt.
So your parents, I assume, were scared, like your brother?
My parents were fine.
Oh, interesting. So
that's
who was it?
That's the weird thing. So my uncle had just retired from the company. He had worked right near me the entire time that I was there for the most part. So my coworkers were worried for me, but I'm like, no, this is the perfect one. So like, okay, we're going to trust you. My uncle was calling me because everyone in my family has anxiety. Everyone.
Well, I'm sure you came by it honestly then.
Oh, very honestly. And so my uncle was getting very anxious on my behalf. And I told him, like, don't worry. I'm like, everything is going to be fine. I'm like, I can't tell you how I know this. I just do. My mom was just, because she had been in a horrible job, and, she didn't even quit. She took FMLA when my dad had surgery and then just never went back. She's like,
I got to respect that.
I don't even want to put in the energy of quitting. So she just never went back. Just moved down to North Carolina and just didn't do anything. I think
Did she ghost her job? Is that basically what happened?
Basically, completely ghosted her job. It was great. They deserved it. They were horrible. But my mom was just like, no, I fully understand. You can't do this anymore. You're fine. She's like, everything is going to work out for the best. My dad was a little worried, but I could tell, like, more worried than my mom, because again, the anxiety comes from his side. But still, he was like, no, like, you're a big girl. You can do this decision. She's like, and if he's making plans for me, he's like, if anything happens and you need to, you can always move in with us again, and blah, blah, blah. We'll make space for your cat. So like, he was making plans to move me down to North Carolina, and I had to stop. I'm like, I have enough saved up, like with the severance and getting unemployment and like my savings. I'm like, I'll be good for many months. Like, we don't have to worry about me moving down to you for quite some time, because I'm sorry, parents, I don't want to live with you anymore. I'm
not in North Carolina either.
Middle of nowhere, just them and bears. There are there's a mother bear and 2 bear cubs near them. Which terrifies me because they always run outside to see the bear. I'm like, can we not go out into the wild, like near the wildlife? Can we just not do that?
Can we just like look at it from the house? Have you invested in a pair of binoculars?
I think I might have got, no, I didn't get my dad a telescope, but I was going to. Anyway, so my parents were fine. My older brother called me up. He's trying to counsel me into like taking the other job. He's like, no, this will help you. I'm like, it really won't. Not with what I want to do. I'm like, if I want to stay in natural herbal supplements, yes, maybe. I'm like, but I don't. And again, like my friends were completely behind me, but at the same time, I know that they were slightly worried just because they're control freaks, just like I am in a lot of ways. So like I said, just the more everyone around me got worried, the calmer I felt because I'm like, no, this is right. I'm like, you keep telling me things. I'm like, and I just keep feeling the visceral, like polar opposite, like moving in the opposite direction of what you're trying to tell me to do. So I know that what I'm doing is right. So my job ended on the 30th of July. I had been in contact because I had done the whole like LinkedIn, just easy apply, feminine energy thing. And I'd contacted like one, I can speak. It's been a long day. And I'll tell you why it's been a long day in a minute. I've been in touch with a recruiter and she contacted me the first Monday that I was off. She's like, hey, the company wants to have an interview with you. Are you free tomorrow, meaning Tuesday? I said, sure. Had that interview. They immediately set up a second interview with me for Thursday. There was a confusion on the time on their end. So I was waiting on Zoom with no one there. And so they finally get back to me. He's like, we're not going to do the second interview. You're just hired. Less than a week after I finished my last job with no plan, I had a new job that was fully remote, paid more money, and was keeping me in marketing and actually was going to teach me more because there's I didn't know this when I like got the job, but there's such a long period of like rolling training. They have like a 30, 60 and 90-day plan for me.
Wow.
I love it. So I did that and I was absolutely shocked and I told you about it and I took the job, but at the same time I kept thinking, I'm like, am I doing this just because of like the giddiness? So I had to get in touch with myself and like really question, like making sure it's like, this is the right decision, right? And no. It felt like it was the right decision, but the problem was so much had happened so quickly that I was like, no, you need to rest. So I was telling you earlier at one point that for the following 2 weeks that I had off, I was able to rest. And I think I was able to do that because I knew that today was going to be my first day of work. Mm-hmm. So I had an endpoint. And so not only was it you need to rest for this period of time because you're not going to like be able to rest this way after it starts. It was also, you already have the job. You don't have to worry about putting your pressure on yourself for that.
Yeah.
Everything's already figured out. So did that. So I had my first day today, which is why I'm tired because this is my 5th video interview of the day. Not an interview, but meeting. And it's just, I'm not used to being engaged with people for an entire day. It's been three weeks. So that's what started. So it's just, like I said, it's once you really start to feel the feminine energy, I feel like things start moving at a very quick pace and in a way that it's like, this is not, you can't even say that this is a coincidence. This is too odd for it to be anything other than something more than just, you're lucky.
Especially after a year, right? Like a year of being like, what is happening? I want a new job. It's not happening. It's not happening. And then within like a couple of weeks of you being like, I'm going to practice a different way of showing up. Boom. Severance, new job within a few days. Like, yeah, I don't think that like, I don't see a coincidence there. I see correlation there. I see causation there. Earlier you said, I don't know how to explain this epiphany to people because for me, it was a very visceral sensation. Mm-hmm. And I think that's valid though. That's how a lot of people's intuition shows up. For you experience your intuition in a very like physical kind of sensation way, like clairsentience is what they call that. And some people also have like those really like just visceral, strong, like bodily gut feelings about things, or like that sensation of just relief and like leaning back that you had. I think that the answer is not like, oh wait, how do I mimic what Diana did? It's, well, let me go back and practice like getting like the steps of like getting into feminine energy and figure out, well, what works for me? How do I like, what's my relationship to this? And then practice that, because that's what you did, is you practiced your way. You know, your way was, I'm going to remind myself of that particular sensation every time I find myself getting worked up, or every time I find myself gripping and controlling. I'm going to remember that sensation of relaxing. And that worked for you. For some people, it might be slowing down that works for them. It might be, you know, for me, it's often like going and doing something that I feel like is the opposite of what I should be doing in that moment. Like I should be doing more. No, I think I'm going to like take it easy. Or I think I'm going to go work out or take a shower instead of do more work right now. But like, you found what worked for you.
I think another thing is that, so I said before that I've been very divorced from my body, and I've been trying to get back into like just being more in touch with it. Like I've been a klutz for quite a while. And I think it's because I don't really necessarily have like complete like grip on where I am in space.
Yeah.
You know, like the mind is divorced from the body. So I've been trying to get more and more in touch with that. And one of the ways I've been doing that, and I've been practicing this for a while because it has helped me immensely, is I think I actually emailed you an article about this. Like I read something where someone was like talked about using your body as a pendulum.
Mm-hmm.
So, to explain for people, a pendulum is like something that's on the end of a string or a chain or something. And you ask it a question and it will move in a certain way for yes and move in another way for no.
Mm-hmm.
And depends on the moment. You usually have to ask like, show me yes, show me no, and you'll see which way it moves. And someone was talking about using your body as a pendulum and just kind of like feeling the sensation for yes and no. So I started doing that, and I would just make sure that like I had firm feet on the ground, you know, hip width apart, slight bend in the knees so that I could feel myself sway, but I felt very grounded. I just take a moment to just like center myself. And then I would ask, you know, show me yes and show me no. And I feel a definite pull in one direction for yes, and in the opposite direction for no. And so I would, even at work, I would just like stand up at my desk at like different times and just be silent and just look like I was just standing there oddly. And I was asking myself a question. It's like, do I want to do this? You know, is this right? Something like that. And just getting in touch with what my body was saying, yes, this is what's correct. And no, gave me more ease because I stopped I'm the queen of overthinking. I stopped overthinking things. I stopped kind of like gripping on to like, well, what if? And having anxiety around that and just listening to my body. And I can't tell you, with like the severance, when I asked my body, I felt like I was being pushed in one direction when I asked if I should take it. Like it wasn't even a gentle thing. It was like, you need to like stop yourself because you're about to fall over. I'm like, okay, my body really wants me to take the severance. So that helps me a lot, just because, and this is the point that I was trying to get to before, I feel like if something is difficult for someone to do, slow down, be in touch with their body, anything like that, that's probably what they need to lean into more, because it's
right.
What they're denying in themselves. You know, if you can't slow down, there's a reason for that. You probably need to slow down more. You know, if you're not in touch with your body, you probably need to figure out a way to feel it more, because you're disassociating part of yourself in that way. So I feel like, and this is the annoying part, you have to find the thing that's the most difficult for you, and that's what you have to do.
I had that conversation with a friend today about, you know, I think I need to like throw myself basically like back into work because I'm having an identity crisis, and work has always been the way that I get my identity needs met. And I'm like, no, you need to do the opposite of that. Because if you do that, all you're going to be doing is slapping a Band-Aid over this crisis instead of actually like learning who am I without that deep attachment to this thing that I think makes me me.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, you're right. You often have to lean into the thing that feels the most kind of challenging, which is not to say like, because I think sometimes people hear that and they get confused about what the difference is between that and like doing a hard thing that's just miserable, like being in a toxic job, right? Like there's a distinct difference than like torturing yourself and doing something that is ultimately, is going to be good for you, that's directly related to your own growth. I can't usually find any excuse for staying in a toxic situation that's actually good for you or your growth as a person.
I think it also has to do with being in a toxic work situation is challenging, it's stressful, it's many things. But then there's something that's uncomfortable. And it's not necessarily, like, situations may be uncomfortable at work, but going to work at a toxic situation isn't uncomfortable. The uncomfortable comes in where you start to do it, and that's when the gremlins come in, or that's when you get a complete block, and that's how it's like, no, this is the thing that I need to lean into. Because again, it's not that it's stressing you out. It's not that it's hurting you. It's that you go to do it and it's like the door is closed, but it probably shouldn't be closed. And again, I think it also has to do with something that's like intrinsic unto yourself. You don't really have control over a toxic job. You do have control over whether or not, you go home at night and continue to worry about that toxic job.
Mm-hmm.
Things like that. And I mean, if you want to dissociate in front of YouTube or something, as long as and instead of sitting with those uncomfortable feelings, as long as it's like, I am doing this, I am fully aware I am doing this, but this is self-care at this point for me, because actually sitting with those feelings is just too much for me right now. It's fine, because again, you're allowing yourself to do that, but that you won't. You still have to do the work, but there are moments where you can kind of take a step back. It's like, no, I'm actually gonna, do the thing that allows me to just turn everything else off and just ignore the uncomfortable thing right now, but I'll get back to it.
We could go on and on, but we've been talking for quite a while now.
We have to.
So, any last thoughts or words of wisdom that you want to share to people who are struggling to, I don't know, keep the faith or practice feminine energy or trust that things are going to work out, or, any of that?
If you're not trusting that things are going to work out, it's probably because you're gripping too much.
Totally.
Oh yeah. And it doesn't mean that, okay, now you decide that now I'm going to trust things are going to work out, and that's just what happens. It is something that you have to work towards. It's a matter of looking at the small things, seeing where the things happen, the synchronicities, the little weird coincidences that maybe this isn't a coincidence, but it's just, there's no perfect way to do feminine energy. And I think that's important to know, because I started off doing it very imperfectly. I was still gripping. And it was just a build up to just some, like I said, an epiphany, because I just feel like me feeling that sensation of leaning back helped take me out of so many situations where I would grip, and it helped me to loosen my grip even more. So feminine energy is very much a practice. It's not something that you can perfect. I think people need to know that, because otherwise you're the little, tiny Tyrannosaurus hands that are gripping on and, for dear life. And, I lost my train of thought there.
That's
You're
okay.
doing that. Yeah. Basically, don't do that. Just allow it to not be perfect.
Yes. There's like, if you think, that's just like saying, when I work out enough, then I'll be done working out. No. If you want to stay healthy, you have to keep exercising. Much to my dismay, you have to keep exercising if you want to be healthy.
Not only that, but hey, you're doing this thing. Once it starts getting easy, you have to up the ante and make it uncomfortable again to actually
to grow.
You have to keep making exercise uncomfortable in a certain way.
Yeah.
For it to be worth it for you.
Feminine energy practice, that's a muscle. Faith is a muscle. Trust, all these things are muscles, and we flex them constantly, and we do get stronger. The more that we do it, and then we see proof that things are working out, gives us a little bit, stronger. It makes it easier to weather the next thing that feels like it doesn't go our way or that confuses us. So, and you've demonstrated that so many times, whether or not you kind of consciously realize that was what was happening. I think your early sort of like education and career primed you for that, because you've had so many twists and turns. And you've had so many different iterations of your career already, that I think that probably on some level helped you have more faith, because you were like, well, I've always ultimately landed on my feet. God knows where, because who knows, but I've always ultimately been okay. So I guess I'll keep being okay. Odds are.
And not only that, like looking back at my weird past, everything I've done has helped me get to this point.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like there have been no experiences that were bad or that stood out. Like even the job on Wall Street, I really honed my project management there. And now I am in marketing project management. Like that's what I've moved into. So the amount of stuff that I learned at all these different weird positions, even the temp job, which half of that was just standing up to the temp agency. They were horrible. I was blacklisted for that temp agency. Like they kept hiring me back because the people loved me that I worked for, but they hated me. And I didn't care. I basically would just call them up and tell them off, which probably wasn't the smartest thing to do, but I did it.
Hey, but we're here.
Yeah. But like I said, I learned skills. I got experiences that helped me in the future, that made things easier, that put things into a different perspective. And so even if you don't know why the universe is pushing you in one direction, if you feel like you're being pushed in a certain direction or being encouraged to go someplace,
You got to go.
it's probably going to be good for you, because seriously, there are basically no decisions that you make that are permanent. There's nothing that you, like, I could decide to do one career today. Doesn't mean I can't change my mind tomorrow and do something else entirely.
Or that the universe can't change its mind on your behalf, right?
That
happens too.
That does happen. But I just mean, like, as far as like my decisions are concerned, I can't make a decision and then that like stop other decisions entirely. Like, no, I can always do something else. I can always move someplace else. And then I would have the experience that I've gained at the other thing that would help me. And then the further ones.
Well, you got your first day under your belt. I think I and everyone else will be interested in what happens next.
Me too.
We're all on board for that update, you included. Well, I'm glad you ended up in a place that's less toxic and that you got what you wanted. And, you know, from here, it's going to be pretty easy to trust that things are going to work out because you got here. So how much, you know, I mean, knock on wood, but how much worse could it be now? It's going to be fine.
Don't say that, but
knock on wood.
Because I thought the last job was good. But at the same time, now I know that, okay, if it's meant to be, it will be. And if I need to get out of this position, it'll happen, and it's in the perfect time.
Right. Thank you. This has been a fun, you know, again, I'm not going to say a culmination because I'm guessing someone's going to hear this and then they're going to be like, all right, I'm going to do what Diana said. And then I'm going to be talking to them in 3 months or something. So we never know.
We'll just continue the train. It will be great.
But I love it.
Like people buying each other coffees at Starbucks or something.
It's kind of like an MLM or something, but like, but for like personal development and feminine energy. And I like it.
I like to think of it more as the paying forward with coffee, because that's just a bit more altruistic than an MLM.
Sure. But it's like, hey, you have to find 2 people to convert to feminine energy. I don't hate that.
We could do it. We can compound it. That'd be great.
All right. Well, you know, maybe I'll start a cult one day, but I just don't know if I have enough ambition for that. So
you've done the research though.
You know, I love cults. I still have to have an episode about that one day. All right. I will talk to you soon. And if you guys want to leave a comment, obviously Diana and I would both love to hear how this one resonated with you. So bye. Thanks, Diana.
Bye.
Okay. That's that.
All right. We will be back next week. If you have been following the Forever Alone feed here on the Clarity on Fire podcast, we will be back on Wednesday.
Yep.
With, what are we on? Installment 5 now?
We'll be on chapter 5. Chapter 5 is, you guys are going to be like, of course it's your favorite chapter, Rachel. I haven't written chapter 7 yet. Still, as we're talking, I still haven't written chapter 7. Listen, life got kind of weird. I will finish it. Promise I'm not going to leave you hanging. Chapter 5 is my favorite because it's the one about depression. You're like, of course that's your favorite chapter. But the thing is that whenever I've gone back and like read it to edit it, I cry every time I read it. So I'm like, well, I touched on some stuff that I really truly felt. So it's very raw and it's very honest. And I think that either you will relate to it if you're someone who struggles with that, or maybe it'll help you understand somebody who does better.
I can't tell if it makes total sense or if it's weirdly masochistic that your favorite chapter is about depression.
Well, yeah, I mean,
it makes sense. it's a way you have to dive deep into who you are and some serious healing when you're going to get into the topic of depression throughout your life. But it is kind of ironic that that's a favorite.
No, it's just because it's easier to talk about your history. Like, oh, here's who I dated. It's harder to put into words something like that. And because I feel like I did it, I am proud of the fact that I put it into words and put it into words, I think, well. So therefore it is my favorite because it was harder to do. See what I mean?
Yeah, I see that. I get it.
Okay. Well, you can judge for yourself when you hear me talk about it next Wednesday.
All right. Well, I'm excited because I've been listening in real time to that one with everyone else. I don't get early access. So I will hear it next Wednesday with all of you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.